transport ship's engines hummed to silence as Ambassador Valterra pressed their long, pale fingers against the viewport. Below stretched Earth's wounded landscape, a patchwork of green fields scarred by dark craters and twisted metal. Rose from distant cities like gray prayers, ascending to an indifferent sky. "First time seeing a human war zone?" asked the pilot. A gruff Centaurian trader who'd made this run dozens of times. "Gets easier after the 10th or so." Valterra is translucent. Skin shifted to a deeper blue, betraying their anxiety. The Etherian had spent 3 decades studying galactic civilizations from the comfort of their crystalline towers on Etherios Prime. War was something they read about in academic reports, not something they smelled in the air. The landing bay reeked of fuel and something else, something metallic and organic that made Valterra's sensitive nose wrinkle. Human soldiers moved with practiced efficiency, loading supplies and checking weapons that seemed primitive compared to galactic energy. Weapons. These humans still used projectile firearms, chemical explosives, crude metal vehicles that belched smoke. "Barbaric," Valterra whispered, activating their recording device. The Galactic Council would want detailed documentation of human savagery. "Captain." Kim Taeho approached across the landing pad, his boots crunching on debris. His face bore the weathered lines of someone who'd seen too much, yet his eyes held unexpected warmth. He wore a faded uniform patched in several places and a sidearm that looked like it had been used recently. "Ambassador Valterra, I presume?" Taeho extended his hand in the crude human greeting. "Welcome to what's left of Sector 7. I'm Captain." "Kim, your liaison for this diplomatic mission?" Valterra reluctantly touched the human's hand, surprised by its calloused warmth. Most galactic species had evolved beyond physical labor, but humans still worked with their hands, still touched things directly. "The Council sends their regards," Valterra replied formally. "Though I must express concern about conducting this evaluation in an active combat zone." Taeho's weathered face cracked into a grin. "Well, Ambassador, you can't really understand humans without seeing us at our worst, can you? The transport's this way." Their vehicle was an armored beast that growled and lurched across broken roads. Through reinforced windows, Valterra watched the devastation unfold. Buildings stood like broken teeth against the horizon. Burned-out vehicles littered the streets. Walls were pockmarked with bullet holes and blast damage. "How long has this conflict lasted?" Valterra asked, recording everything. "This particular engagement? About 8 months? But humans have been fighting each other for millennia." Taeho navigated around a massive crater. "We're good at it. Maybe too good. Yet you persist in these destructive behaviors," Valterra observed. "Other species evolved beyond warfare centuries ago." Taeho was quiet for a moment. Maybe they were lucky enough not to need it. The field hospital emerged from the haze like a cluster of white mushrooms, inflatable medical domes surrounded by defensive barriers. Hover ambulances buzzed overhead like mechanical insects, their red crosses stark against military camouflage. Human medics rushed between vehicles, carrying stretchers and shouting orders in their harsh, emotional language. Dr. Park Ji-woo met them at the entrance, her surgical scrubs stained dark with blood. It was smaller than Taeho, with tired eyes and steady hands that never stopped moving. Even as she spoke, she was checking medical supplies, adjusting equipment, evaluating incoming patients with quick professional glances. "Ambassador, welcome to our little slice of chaos," she said without stopping her work. "We've got incoming wounded from both sides of the line. Hope you don't mind the sight of blood." Valterra's skin shifted to pale green, their species equivalent of nausea. "You treat enemy combatants." "Blood is blood," Park replied, lifting a wounded soldier onto a gurney. "This one's from the opposing faction, took shrapnel to the chest. He'll live if we work fast." The Etherian watched in fascination as human. Medical teams swarmed around casualties. They moved with choreographed precision, each knowing their role without discussion. Advanced medical scanners, some clearly of galactic origin, hummed alongside primitive surgical tools. These humans had somehow integrated superior alien technology with their own crude methods. "How did you acquire vegan healing chambers?" Valterra asked, recognizing the advanced medical pods. "Trade agreements," Taeho explained. We may be primitive, but we learn fast. Anything that saves lives, we'll use. An explosion rumbled in the distance, shaking dust from the medical domes. Ceiling. Alarms began wailing as more ambulances approached. Park barely glanced up from her patient. Busy day ahead, she muttered, then looked at Veltara with something that might have been pity. Stay close, Ambassador. Things are about to get interesting. Yes. Wounded humans began streaming into the facility. Veltara realized this would be unlike any diplomatic mission they'd ever undertaken. These humans lived in constant violence, yet showed unexpected mercy. They possessed advanced alien technology, yet chose primitive weapons. They fought with savage efficiency, yet risked everything to heal their enemies. The Ethereans' recording device hummed quietly, capturing everything for the Council's review. But already Veltara suspected their report would be far more complex than anyone expected. The first mortar round hit at exactly 05 for 7 hours, turning the dawn sky into a canvas of orange fire. Veltara jerked awake in their assigned quarters as the ground shook beneath them. Through the reinforced window, they watched tracer rounds streak across the horizon like deadly shooting stars. "Welcome to human morning coffee, Captain," Kim said. Appearing at Veltara's door with body armor and a helmet, "We need to get you to the command bunker." But Veltara refused to hide. This was exactly what they'd come to document human savagery in its rawest form. The Etherean followed Kim toward the medical facility, their recording device capturing every explosion, every scream, every moment of chaos. The battlefield stretched out before them like a vision from hell. Human soldiers moved through the smoke, with deadly precision, their primitive weapons somehow holding their own against enemy forces, equipped with plasma rifles and energy shields. Veltara watched in fascination as a human squad used nothing but conventional explosives and tactical cunning to disable an advanced hover tank. How are they doing that? Altora gasped, watching humans leap between cover with impossible courage. "Humans don't fight fair," Kim replied, ducking as energy blasts scorched the air above them. "We fight smart." Inside the medical dome, chaos reigned. Dr. Park moved between patients like a dancer, her hands steady despite the constant explosions outside. Wounded soldiers from both sides lay on stretchers, their blood mixing on the tent floor. What struck Veltara most was the complete absence of hatred medics. Treated enemy soldiers with the same desperate care they showed their own people. Sergeant Lee Do-yoon, crouched by a communications console, coordinating defensive positions, while simultaneously helping Park with a badly wounded prisoner. The enemy soldier, young human from the opposing faction, clutched Lee's hand as she worked to stop his bleeding. "Contact Northridge. We need covering fire for the evacuation." Lee barked into her radio, then immediately turned back to the wounded enemy. "Hey, stay with me." "What's your name?" "Minsu," the soldier whispered. "I can't feel my legs." "Minsu's a good name," Lee said gently, applying pressure to his wounds. "My brother's name is Minjae. You remind me of him." Veltara's skin shifted to deep purple confusion mixed with disbelief. "Sergeant, this soldier was trying to kill you minutes ago." Lee looked up briefly, her face streaked with dirt and blood. "What's your hurt? What's your point?" An enemy artillery barrage began pounding their position. The medical domes. Emergency shields flickered under the assault. Sophisticated alien technology struggling against human destructive power. Through the chaos, Veltara watched Dr. Park continue operating on an enemy officer while her own people fought and died. Outside, "Why?" Veltara demanded, grabbing Park's shoulder. "Why do you help them?" Park didn't stop working, her hands moving with surgical precision, even as explosions rocked the facility. "Because he's someone's son," she said simply. "Mother is wondering if he'll come home, same as our boys." The illogic of it staggered Veltara. No other galactic species behaved this way. The Centaurians fought until extinction rather than show mercy. The vegan empire simply glassed entire planets to avoid casualties. But humans primitive, savage humans somehow found compassion in the middle of slaughter. A new alarm began shrieking. Enemy forces had broken through the perimeter. Through the medical domes, transparent walls, Veltara could see hostile soldiers advancing through the smoke, their weapons blazing. Several civilians refugees who'd sought shelter near the medical facility were caught in the crossfire. Private Han Soyoung was supposed to be manning a defensive position. Instead, Veltara watched in amazement as the young soldier abandoned her post and sprinted into the killing zone. Plasma bolts seared the air around her as she reached a family trapped behind an overturned vehicle. An elderly man, a woman, and two small children. Soyoung, get back here. Lee screamed into her radio. That's a direct order. But Soyoung was already lifting the injured woman, gesturing for the family to follow her. Enemy fire intensified, forcing her to zigzag between cover. An energy blast caught her in the shoulder, spinning her around, but she kept moving. Step by agonizing step, she guided the civilians back toward safety. Veltara found themselves holding their breath as Soyoung stumbled, blood streaming down her arm. Enemy soldiers were closing in. Any rational being would abandon the civilians and save themselves. Her good arm. That's when something remarkable happened. The enemy soldiers, seeing the civilians, seeing Soyoung's wounds, seeing her desperate protection of innocents, actually hesitated. For a moment that stretched like eternity, human faced human across a few meters of scarred earth. Then one of the enemy soldiers lowered his weapon and gestured for his squad to hold fire. They watched silently as Soyoung helped the family reach safety, then melted back into the smoke without another shot fired. Did you record that? Kim asked quietly. Veltara nodded, their hands trembling as they adjusted their device. In 30 years of diplomatic service, they'd never witnessed anything like this. Humans were supposed to be mindless aggressors, driven by primitive instincts. But this was something else entirely. The battle raged for 6 more hours. When the guns finally fell silent, Veltara had documented acts of violence that would horrify the Galactic Council. But they'd also recorded something unprecedented, moments of humanity that defied every expectation. Every prejudice, every assumption the galaxy held about Earth's children, as medics continued treating wounded from both sides. Veltara began to suspect their mission would uncover truths the galaxy wasn't prepared to hear. The third day of fighting brought something Veltara had never seen before, a moment that would forever change how they viewed humanity. The battle had reached its crescendo, with both sides throwing everything they had at each other. Energy weapons screamed through the air while human projectile guns answered with their own deadly chorus. Commander Choi Minho stood in the command bunker, his weathered hands gripping the tactical display. The holographic battlefield showed enemy positions in red, friendly forces in blue. What caught Veltara's attention was a cluster of yellow-dot civilian refugees, trapped in a bombed-out shopping complex right in the middle of the combat zone. Sir, we have a clear shot at the enemy command post, Lieutenant Kong Haijin reported, her voice tight with excitement. Their entire leadership is holed up in that building. One precision strike and we end this. With growing understanding, the enemy had positioned themselves brilliantly, or perhaps desperately. Their command center sat directly behind the civilian shelter. Any attack on the military target would inevitably harm the innocents caught between. Distance to target? Choi asked quietly.
Alex.
We have orbital bombardment ready, plasma artillery locked on, and our best snipers in position, Kong replied. We could finish this war right now. Through the bunker's reinforced windows, Veltara could see the building in question. Smoke rose from its damaged roof, and occasionally, the flash of weapons fire flickered in the windows. But in the floors below, families huddled in what they hoped was safety. Choi studied the display for a long moment. His tactical computer showed the odds a 93% chance of victory if they took the shot. The war could end today. His soldiers could go home. The dying could stop. Sir? Kong pressed. Enemy reinforcements are 12 minutes out. This is our window. I can see that, Lieutenant, Choi said softly. His fingers traced the yellow dots on the display one representing a human life. How many civilians? Approximately 200, sir. Mixed ages? Veltaris recording. Device captured every word, every pause, every moment of this impossible decision. In the Galactic archives, they'd studied countless military engagements. The logical choice was obvious: sacrifice the few to save the many. End the war quickly to prevent more casualties. Any rational commander would take the shot. Stand down. All bombardment, Choi ordered. Sir, Kong's voice cracked with disbelief. Sir, we can end this right now. Not at that cost. The words hung in the bunker's recycled air like a challenge to everything the galaxy believed about human nature. Veltara watched as hardened soldiers, beings who'd spent years learning to kill, efficiently accepted their commander's decision without question. Not one of them argued. Not one of them suggested alternatives that might harm the civilians. Outside, the battle continued. Human soldiers advanced through deadly crossfire, taking positions building by building, room by room. Then a quick victory became a grinding, costly assault. Veltara watched through drone feeds as young humans fell to enemy fire deaths. That could have been prevented by a single orbital strike. Past, your decision cost lives. Your own people died because you refused to eliminate the enemy command. Choi removed his helmet and ran tired hands through graying hair. His uniform bore scorch marks from near misses, and his eyes held the weight of every soldier under his. Command, you're right, Ambassador. 3 of my people died in that assault. Good people with families waiting for them. He looked out at the battlefield where medics moved between the wounded. But 200 civilians went home to their families. 2. The mathematical logic suggests mathematics doesn't raise children, Choi interrupted gently. Mathematics doesn't love, or hope, or dream. Those civilians aren't numbers on a tactical display. They're teachers and shopkeepers and kids who just want to grow up. Desperate care, they showed their own. Dr. Park emerged from the medical tent. Her surgical gown stained with blood from both sides of the conflict. She moved between stretchers without regard for uniforms or allegiances, seeing only humans in need of healing. Your species puzzles me, Veltara admitted. The galaxy views you as savage warriors, yet you show mercy to those who would kill. Choi leaned against the bunker wall, fatigue written in every line of his face. Maybe that's why the galaxy doesn't understand us. They think we fight because we love destruction. He gestured toward the medical tent, where former enemies were being treated side by side. But we don't fight because we love war, Ambassador. We fight because we love what war threatens to destroy. The revelation hit Veltara like a physical blow. For 3 decades, they'd studied galactic conflicts through academic reports and historical data. War was about resources, territory, dominance. But watching these humans, seeing their impossible choices and costly mercy, they began to understand something profound. Human warfare wasn't about conquest, it was about protection. What they held dear. Even in the midst of battle, they carried the seeds of peace, treating wounded foes and sheltering innocent lives. A young soldier approached Private Yoon Ji-hai, barely old enough to be in uniform. She carried a small bundle wrapped in medical cloth. Commander, sir, she said softly. We found this in the civilian shelter. She unwrapped the bundle to reveal a tiny kitten, mewing pitifully. It was alive. Building must have been a pet store, Ji-hai explained. This little guy was the only survivor. Choi took the kitten gently, his calloused hands impossibly tender. Better get him to Dr. Park, she'll know what to do. Veltara watched the most powerful human in the sector, a man who commanded orbital bombardments and controlled the fate of thousands, carefully carry a wounded animal to safety. Of humanity, beings capable of devastating violence, who would risk everything to save a single innocent life. As the day wore on, Veltara began to understand that everything the galaxy believed about humans was wrong. They weren't savage because they loved savagery. They were savage because they loved everything else. Too much to let it be destroyed. The weeks that followed became a masterclass in human contradiction that left Veltara's understanding of the galaxy forever changed. Each day brought new evidence that everything the Galactic Council believed about humanity was not just wrong, but backwards. Corporal Moon Jae-soon was cleaning his rifle when the order came through. Veltara watched from the command bunker as the young soldier received his mission briefing: precision strike on an enemy weapons depot. The target was clear, the intelligence solid, and the tactical advantage enormous. "Simple job, Lieutenant Kang," explained Two Moon's squad. "Enemy ammunition storage. Grid reference 77 Alpha. Destroy it, and we cut off their supply line for weeks." Moon studied the aerial photos, his weathered fingers tracing the target zone. But something in his expression made Veltara lean closer to the tactical display. The Etherian had learned to read human faces over these past weeks, and Moon looked troubled. "Double quotes, sir. What's this building here?" Moon pointed to a structure adjacent to the weapons depot. "Civilian apartment complex. Evacuated 3 days ago, according to intelligence reports." Moon was quiet for a long moment. "Permission to conduct visual reconnaissance before the strike, sir?" "Negative. We have solid intel. Hit the target and get out." But Veltara watched Moon's squad prepare for the mission with unusual care. The corporal spent extra time checking his equipment, spoke quietly with his team, and made subtle adjustments to their approach route. Something was bothering him. The mission launched at dawn. Veltara monitored through drone feeds as Moon's squad moved through the destroyed cityscape toward their target. The weapons depot stood exactly where intelligence indicated a concrete bunker, surrounded by military vehicles and ammunition crates. Then Moon did something that made Veltara's skin shift to shocked silver. Instead of immediately attacking, he positioned his squad for observation and spent precious minutes studying the adjacent buildings through his scope. "Contacts in the civilian structure," Moon reported over the radio. "I count at least 30 people, including children." "Impossible," came the reply from command. "Intel confirmed evacuation." "Intel was wrong, sir. Families are sheltering in the basement. Direct strike on the depot will collapse the apartment building." Silence filled the radio channels. Veltara could almost feel the weight of the decision pressing down on everyone involved. The weapons depot contained enough ammunition to supply enemy forces for months. Destroying it would save countless human lives in future battles. But the blast would also kill 30 innocent civilians who had nowhere else to go. Mission parameters remain unchanged. Command finally responded. "Complete the objective." Moon's response came after a long pause. "Negative. I will not fire on civilian targets." "Corporal, that is a direct order." "Then court-martial me, sir. I'm not killing kids." Veltara watched in fascination as Moon's entire squad soldiers, who had sworn oaths of obedience, who faced severe punishment for disobedience, quietly moved to defensive positions around the civilian building. Not one of them questioned their corporal's decision. Not one of them chose duty over conscience. The aftermath was swift and predictable. Moon faced immediate disciplinary action. His military career was over. 20 years of service, a spotless record. Commendations for bravery, all thrown away for a moment of what his superiors called weakness. But Veltara was beginning to understand it wasn't weakness at all. Dr. Park had been working for 36 hours straight when the next wave of casualties arrived. Enemy forces had launched a massive assault, and wounded soldiers poured into the medical facility faster than the staff could handle. Park moved between patients like a ghost, her hands steady despite exhaustion that would have killed most galactic species. "Doctor, you need to rest," Veltara urged, watching Park struggle to stay upright. "Your body is failing." "Bodies can be repaired," Park replied, not stopping her work. "Death is permanent." What amazed Veltara most was that Park treated enemy wounded with the same desperate care she showed friendly forces. A captured soldier with shrapnel wounds received the same advanced medical care as the human officers who'd captured him. When medical supplies ran low, Park made decisions based purely on medical need, not military allegiance. "Why?" Veltara asked, as Park worked on an enemy sniper who'd killed 3 human soldiers just hours earlier. This individual has taken lives from your own people. Park looked up briefly, her tired eyes holding depths of compassion that the Etherean was only beginning to understand. He's also someone's child, someone who taught him to walk, helped him with homework, worried when he was sick. She returned to her work. War makes enemies of us all, but medicine makes us human again. As the sun set over the battlefield, Valtora found Captain Kim standing on the observation deck, watching the organized chaos of the medical facility. Human medics moved between friend and foe, saving lives without regard for uniforms or flags. It was a scene that would never happen in any other galactic military force. Your people call us savages, Kim said quietly, his weathered hands gripping the railing. Council sees our wars and assumes we love violence. They watch us fight and think we're primitive beasts who can't evolve beyond aggression. And yet, Valtara observed, you show more mercy than species that claim to have evolved beyond warfare. Kim nodded toward the medical tent where Dr. Park was still working. Most galactic species achieved peace by avoiding hard choices. They isolated themselves, or surrendered to stronger forces, or simply refused to fight for anything. But sometimes, Ambassador, someone has to be willing to enter hell to drag others out. The revelation struck Valtara with stunning clarity. Human violence wasn't a failure of evolution, it was a choice. These beings could have achieved peace the same way other species had, through isolation or submission. Instead, they chose to bear the burden of conflict so others wouldn't have to. We're not violent by nature, Kim continued. We're willing to become violent when necessary. There's a difference. A Centaurian fights until they die rather than show weakness. A vegan simply destroys entire planets to avoid casualties. But humans, we fight to protect what we love, then spend our lives trying to heal the damage we caused. Over the following days, Valtera documented countless examples of this uniquely human paradox. Soldiers who would kill without hesitation to protect civilians, then risk their lives to save enemy wounded. Officers who disobeyed orders to prevent atrocities, sacrificing their careers for their consciences. Medics who worked beyond physical endurance to save lives on both sides of the conflict. The galaxy had missed the point entirely. Humans weren't savage because they were primitive. They were willing to embrace savagery because they understood its cost. They didn't fight because they loved war. They fought because they loved everything war threatened to destroy. As Valtara watched human soldiers share their rations with captured enemies, they realized the truth that would shock the Galactic Council. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their capacity for violence, but their refusal to let violence define them. The Great Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. 12,000 delegates from across the galaxy sat in stunned silence as Valtara concluded their report. Translucent skin flickered between colors of deep conviction and nervous uncertainty as they faced the most powerful beings in known space. You ask us to believe, rumbled Chancellor Vexthak of the Dominion Empire, his massive crystalline form pulsing with skeptical energy, that these primitive humans are somehow superior to civilizations that have existed for millions of years. Valtara-esque skin shifted to calm blue. Not superior, Chancellor. Different. While we achieved peace through isolation and surrender, they achieved wisdom through struggle. We avoided the darkness, they learned to carry it. The chamber erupted in dismissive sounds from dozens of species. The Centaurian delegation hissed their disapproval. The floating ethereal collective pulsed with colors of disdain. Even the peaceful vegan representatives shifted uncomfortably in their biomechanical suits. Ambassador Valtera spoke high. Counselor Zephe, their voice carrying the authority of 3 millennia. Your report recommends accepting humanity into the Galactic Council, despite their obvious violent tendencies. This council exists to prevent warfare, not embrace it. With respect, High Counselor, this council exists because we fear warfare. There is a difference. Valtora activated their holographic display showing scenes from Earth's battlefields. Observe these humans not as savages, but as protectors. The assembled delegates watched footage of human soldiers sharing food with captured enemies, medics treating wounded regardless of allegiance, officers sacrificing tactical advantages to protect civilians. The images painted a picture that challenged every assumption the galaxy held about humanity. Impressive propaganda, muttered Admiral Kex of the Stellar Federation. But ultimately irrelevant. Humanity remains too primitive, for the Admiral's words were cut off by emergency klaxons echoing through the assembly hall. Every delegate's communication device activated simultaneously, flooding the chamber with urgent transmissions in dozens of languages. But one word was universal, translating across every species' terror response. DEVOURERS. High Counselor Zephe. Ancient form trembled as they accessed the incoming data streams. The void gates have opened. Ancient enemies emerge from dark space. All Outer Rim colonies report ... Silence. Velterra watched the galaxy's most powerful leaders transform from confident rulers into terrified beings facing an enemy they'd hoped never to encounter again. The Devourers insentient machines that had consumed entire sectors, before disappearing into the dark between galaxies, had returned after 10,000 years of absence. "Deploy the Galactic Defense Fleet," ordered Chancellor Vextac, but his voice lacked conviction. "Sir," reported a trembling aide, "the defense fleet was designed for policing, not warfare. We haven't built true warships in centuries." The awful truth settled over the assembly like a burial shroud. Done. In their pursuit of peace, the galaxy's civilized species had forgotten how to fight. Their weapons were ceremonial, their ships were exploratory, their soldiers were peacekeepers trained to break up trade disputes, not face an extinction-level threat. "What about the battle archives?" someone suggested desperately. "Ancient weapon designs, military strategies?" "Academic studies only," came the reply. "No practical application for 3,000 years." That's when Velterra stood, their voice cutting through the panic. "There is one option." Every eye in the chamber turned to the Etherean diplomat. The humans. The suggestion was met with immediate outrage. "Impossible," roared Vexthoke. "We cannot entrust galactic security to primitives. They're the only species in the known galaxy that still wages war," Velterra replied calmly. "While we studied conflict in classrooms, they lived it. While we designed ceremonial weapons, they built tools of survival. Within hours, the desperate call went out across space. Long-range transmissions reached, Earth carrying a message the galaxy had never expected to send. "Help us, Captain Kimteho." Received the transmission aboard the human battleship. Soul's Pride. The aging vessel, considered primitive by galactic standards, suddenly represented the galaxy's last hope. Around him, his bridge crew worked with the quiet efficiency Velterra had observed on Earth's battlefields. "So let me understand this," Kim said to the holographic image of High Counselor Zephe. "For centuries, you've called us savages, refused our applications for membership, and treated us like dangerous animals. Now you want our help. Captain, I understand your reluctance." "Oh, I'm not reluctant," Kim interrupted with a grim smile. "We're already moving. 15 battle groups, 300 ships. Our best people will be there in 36 hours. The relief in Zephe's ancient voice was audible. "Thank you, Captain. The galaxy will not forget we're not doing this." "For thanks," Kim cut in. "We're doing it because it's right." The Battle of the 12 Worlds became legend across the galaxy. Human ships screwed, heavily armored, bristling with projectile weapons engaged devourer machines that dwarfed entire space stations. Where elegant galactic vessels would have been overwhelmed by superior technology, human warships adapted, improvised, endured. Velterra watched from the safety of a galactic observation ship as Captain Kim's fleet engaged impossible odds. Above the crystalline world of Vexthera Prime, human fighters, tiny specks, against massive devourer constructs darted between energy beams that could vaporize mountains. "Human fleet, this is Vexera Control," came the desperate transmission. "Devourer breakthrough on Vector 7. Our cities are defenseless." Kim's response was immediate. "Copy that. Control. All units, defensive formation around populated areas, weapons free, protect the civilians." What followed was a masterclass in human warfare. Ships designed for galactic exploration found themselves shielded by human vessels that absorbed devastating attacks. Human crewsmen barely out of their teens flew suicide runs against devourer weapons to protect alien worlds that had never welcomed them. The tide turned when Kim's flagship, the Soul's Pride, made the ultimate sacrifice. Valterra watched in awe as the massive battleship, its hull breached in bleeding atmosphere, positioned itself between a devourer mothership and the planet below. Kim's final transmission echoed across every communication channel in the galaxy. All ships, this is Soul's Pride. We've got this. Go home to your families. The explosion that followed lit up half the star system. When the plasma cleared, the Devourer mothership was gone, and with it, the threat to 12 worlds. The Soul's Pride had become a expanding cloud of debris. But 40 million alien civilians were alive because of Captain Kim's sacrifice. In the aftermath, as rescue ships searched for survivors and the galaxy tallied the cost of salvation, Valterra stood before the Galactic Council once more. This time no one questioned their words. The humans saved us, Valterra said simply. Not because we deserved it, but because they understood something we forgot sometimes. Someone has to be willing to enter the darkness so others can live in the light. The vote for human membership in the Galactic Council was unanimous. More importantly, the galaxy had learned a lesson that would echo through the ages. True strength isn't the absence of violence, but the wisdom to know when violence serves a greater good. Captain Kim Taeho had been wrong about one thing. The galaxy would never forget. Monuments rose on 12 worlds bearing his name, but the greatest monument was the understanding that humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy wasn't their capacity for war, but their willingness to sacrifice everything for peace. The end.